In the fourth episode of Dear Young Men, we are going to cover why I gave up a YouTube channel with 15,000 subscribers, how the world became a materialistic hellscape, and finally, the tragedy of modern masculinity on Dear Young Men. On this channel, it is my job to teach you about life, I think. And I know that online courses have become all the rage in the last couple of years. I, for one, am impressed with just how many people think that their knowledge is worth so much money. So, over the past couple of days, I have spent more than an hour to create an entire school's worth of curriculum. Each course is currently available on my website. Course 1. This is called Course Consolidation. With this course, I will teach you how to consolidate other courses that you have paid for into your own course to sell. Some people might think this is stealing, but look at Samsung. Did they not just repackage the iPhone? This is Business 101, and my course delves into much of the nuances of course creation. Course number 2. This one is called Network Expansion Systems. Now that you've created your own course, follow up with this course. In this course, I will teach you how to sell courses to others who will actually become brand ambassadors for your course, which in turn will create a multi-layered network with expansive opportunities to grow and earn. The whole idea is that you have some course sellers that you work with, and when they sell your course to somebody, you make a percentage of that profit, creating a never-ending stream of passive income because those brand ambassadors you work with can sell to other brand ambassadors. In the business world, we refer to this as an infinite growth tree with the potential for endless branches, which in turn creates another nuanced and passive income stream. Course number 3. This one is called Manage Your Emotions, You Coward. This is a course to help you sleep at night, knowing you sold a course to an audience that trusted you. It's not about feeling guilty or not guilty. It's about learning to stuff those emotions deep down, only to have them come up again when you are lying in bed at 3 a.m. contemplating your life. I will teach you that your $2,997 course is actually helping those poor people with just a few bucks left to their name. This course is extremely important and will add a nuanced layer to your personality. And finally, my fourth course, Course Addiction Rehab. This is a course designed for those people who spent their hard-earned money on all of my courses and are currently broke. In this course, we will teach you 5 tricks that are not available anywhere else, only available in this course, and the Wealth Toastmasters Hustle Framework, adding the fourth and final piece to your nuanced, matured, and nuanced life. So join my free mindset webinar in the description down below, and don't forget to sign up for next week's free Course Masters Toastmaster Masterclass. But hurry, because spots are limited and they're going fast. This next cohort closes in a few weeks, where you can get exclusive access to a Discord of people who are just as clueless as you. So please, head over to my website today. I have a family and I have mouths to feed. Come to think of it, it's a pretty good course idea. How to be a father. And I'm Scott, and this is the Dear Young Men podcast. Sign up for my course in the description down below. If you're listening to podcast audio version, I want to ask that you please rate it 5 stars, hit follow on the little follow thing, do all the stuff. It really helps the channel out and the podcast hopefully grow and reach a wider, broader audience. But even if you're just taking some time to watch this now, I'm obviously genuinely appreciative of you taking the time. These are 30, 40 minutes long. I know a lot of people probably listen to this at 2x, but still, like, it's remarkable that you'll listen to me for 20 minutes in a row, and I am very, very appreciative of that. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to hit subscribe and like and leave a comment, because I will read your comments, because I don't have any comments for this week's comment section. Again, I sort of expected that because it's a new show, but if you have a comment or a question or anything, please leave it in the comment section down below. All right, so today's episode, we are going to be talking about several things. The first one is going to be why I gave up a YouTube channel with 15,000 subscribers. So to be fair, it actually only has 14,600, but in a few weeks, it'll probably have 15,000 because it's getting a consistent amount of subscribers each day, and that's just sort of how it goes. So why did I give it up? I mean, this is something that I started my YouTube journey with. The channel is called Techno Eclipse. You're more than welcome to go check it out. I don't post on it anymore. I just recently posted my last video a few weeks ago, and I think that this is such an interesting topic to talk about, because who the heck would give up a channel that they've been working on for 6 years with 15,000 subscribers? All my dreams were starting to come true with YouTube. I was making good money, well, relatively good money compared to how much I've spent on it. It's like $500 a month, which was really awesome. But why did I give it up? Mostly because I'm stupid and I can't stay focused on one thing, but we'll talk about that later. The biggest thing is that I just don't like it anymore. I don't like that channel anymore. I have never enjoyed making videos more than I currently do right now. I'm having the most fun. I'm able to sacrifice the most amount of time to make these videos, the podcast, and also on my main channel, the Scott Schroeder channel, which is just called Scott Schroeder. It's my head with a yellow background. You could find it pretty easy. I follow it on my YouTube channel if you want to see that and see some other content from me. And so the big thing is just, I didn't like it anymore. I didn't like the content I was making. It is called Techno Eclipse. It's a tech channel. I came up with it back in 2018 when I really liked technology. I thought technology was so cool. I want to get free products. I want to be able to review MacBooks and get paid for it. And I got to a point where some of that was starting to come true. I've had a lot of people reach out to me. It's a pretty small channel. I mean, it's all relative, but it's 15,000 subscribers for YouTube is pretty small. The views per video is probably around 10 to 15,000, depending on how long the video's been up. But each video could almost guarantee 10 to 15,000, some a lot more, some 40, 50, 60, 70,000, some a lot less, whatever. So I don't like technology anymore. I don't like that version of YouTube, because what I realized when I was making these videos years and years ago, I realized that I'm just supporting a materialist worldview, basically. And I didn't know this at the time. I just knew it made me feel icky. So in 2020, I sort of changed my YouTube channel after really grinding on it for 2 years, and I was growing really fast. I was getting a lot of views. I think I was getting something like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 views a day, and I changed it because I was kind of sick of technology back then. And long story long, I ended up changing it back to a tech channel about a couple years ago, and so I've been making tech videos on it again, trying to find that, rekindle that passion for technology. And some of it was fun, but a lot of it just became me yelling at people for using their phones too much and buying stuff. Like, don't buy new stuff, don't use your phone too much. And I felt like I was running out of things to say on that channel. And I wasn't adding anything new to the conversation. I feel like everything I wanted to say had been said, and I didn't have anything else to add to the tech space. I don't like how the channels, the views of the people who make the videos, I don't know where they're at in their heart. I don't really care, to be honest. It's just the videos that they make support a materialist worldview that I don't like. They support a materialist worldview that's products. This newest phone has this camera. This newest phone has this processor. This newest phone, this newest computer, all this stuff, transistors, yada, yada, yada. And to me, I didn't like it anymore. I didn't want to be part of that. I didn't want to be associated with it. Because at the end of the day, like, my YouTube channels, the ones I've done, they're small, and they'll probably always be small. And I'm okay with that, because these are just, what I make now are love letters to my kids. If you want to keep the things the way that they are, don't have kids, because kids will completely warp your perspective on perspective on life. And my daughter, when she was born, really did, and then my second daughter definitely did, and they just continue to change the way I view the world. It's like, man, stuff doesn't matter at all. There's just this funny story from this last weekend. It's my birthday this last weekekend, and the PGA Championship. I'm a big golfer, and I don't play as much as I used to, but I used to really like it. And so we were watching the PGA Championship, and we watched for like 2 hours, hour and a half, like not that long. We didn't start watching until they were on like 13, basically. And the final group was on 13. And my daughter, after like an hour of it, was complaining. She goes, Dad, done? Pointing at the TV, because she was so sick of watching TV. And that made me so proud. That made me so happy. And we ended up, we left. I thought they were going to go into a playoff, and we ended up, I was going to leave if he missed the putt. He ended up making the final putt on the last hole. Really cool story, whatever. And so we ended up staying. But I was going to be done. I was going to say, let me just watch his last putt, and then we'll leave no matter what happens. If there's a playoff, I'll just check it on my phone later to see who won. And so I don't want to be part of a YouTube. I don't want to be a channel that is pushing an idea that I don't agree with. I don't want to be reviewing new products and going over new things and saying, buy this, don't buy that. You should buy this, you should buy that. Especially when I think a lot of these people are spending all this money. I mean, in some cases, like $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. Some of these products, $10,000, whatever it may be. And they don't really actually understand. Yeah, I mean, some cases, some people are buying these things. They need them for their businesses, and that's great. Fine and dandy. I don't really care about them. I'm talking about the average Joe who's going to spend most of his life scrolling on his phone, watching TikToks. That's who I was trying to speak to, and I felt like I was infiltrating it from the inside. I was like a tech channel, but I was very anti-tech, but I feel like I ran out of things to say. It was a long time coming. Obviously, I had been going back and forth on this channel for years, and I'm sure maybe some of you that have watched this have seen those videos, and they know that I was waffling back and forth, and I think that looking back, the thing is you need to niche down on YouTube. You just have to. But you have to niche down on stuff that you really like. And right now, I'm a father, and I know I will be a father for the rest of my life. So this podcast, in my opinion, the way I've viewed it is this will be so easy to continue to make because I will always be a dad. I might not always like tech. I might not always consider myself really good with money, whatever it may be. So those things might change, but I will always be a father. I will die a father, just like I'll always be a son. So no matter what, I'll always be a father. I always have been a father, and that's just my identity. That's just what I am. So I think that this podcast will allow me to continue because that's what I am. I'm a dad. And the last couple things is, one, I actually think I have problems finishing a job. I think that I saw some growth, and I was like, oh gosh, I don't want to do this forever. And I think I have a problem. I'm not afraid of success. I don't think I'm afraid of success, but that's something that I need to learn to deal with, is putting a lot of time into something. I'm an artist, so I get excited about something. I work really hard on it. And then once it's sort of done, or at least I think it's done, I sort of just move on to the next thing. And I think that that's a bad thing that I do. And I need to continue pushing because 15,000 subscribers is not done. I needed to put a lot more time into it, but I was willing to put a lot of time into it. I'm very good at being patient. I'm really good at starting new things and sticking with them for a long time, but I need to get better at like continuing to see them through as they begin to grow and as they begin to succeed. I think that's something that maybe I am a little self-sabotage in a way. I don't know. Don't think I do it on purpose though. I think it's just like I get bored with stuff and I don't think things through enough before I start it. And I get to a point I go, oh my gosh, I don't want to do this anymore. Like I haven't liked this for the last 2 years and I've been doing it for 3. So anyways, and finally, I think I can just be a lot more effective with my message on this channel and my main channel, Scott Schroeder. I think that what I have to say can be said better on this channel and it doesn't fit onto a tech channel anymore. Next, how did the world become a materialistic hellscape? I use this phrase a lot, materialist world, materialist worldview. It's the idea that things, I think one of the best ways to put it is when people say that was an adrenaline rush, as opposed to saying, wow, that was really exciting. Those two things are completely different. The materialist worldview of that was an adrenaline rush is it's a chemical reaction that happens in my brain. You're not a soul. You're not more than just like a bunch of cells. You're just like a bunch of random collection of cells. That's all you are. So that's a materialist worldview. It's just everything's broken down to like stuff and things and items. Whereas the way I view the world, I'm not saying it's materialist. I just know it's anti-materialist. I guess I would probably say like a Christian worldview. But really, it's like that people are more than just adrenaline rush. They are nerves. They are excitement. They're happy. They're sad. They're all these different things. But so many people now, they say, I have depression instead of saying I'm depressed. And that's the thing. It's like depression is a disease that you can cure. And I do think you can cure depression, but I don't think pills are the way to do it. I mean, everybody is taking pills. I'm not a doctor. I'm just saying that's how I view the world. And I think that a lot of the biggest reason is just because of money. Everything always comes back to money. I think that people love their stuff, and they always have loved their stuff, but now stuff is so easily and readily accessible, and money is as easy as it's ever been to get. If you have a credit card, if you have a name and a social security number, you can get thousands upon thousands of dollars of credit limit on any credit card you could possibly ever own. And it's remarkable because you think about that. Back in the day, like there would be lenders and they would come to your house and they'd know where you live. But now it's like you could just like type a few letters into Google and then an hour later, you could be signed up for a credit card and be able to spend this money online and get these items shipped to your home. You don't have to do any work. So I think money has a lot to do with it. Obviously, every company's goal is to have you buy as many of their products as possible. There's nothing that a company could do that like they want their products to break in a way, but be really high quality and then break or be rendered useless. Apple's really good at doing this with their iPhones. Obviously, they put a lot of money into the research and development, making them feel really good in the hand, making them look really good. But then every 2 or 3 years, they change the design in a noticeable way so that way people know that you have the new phone or you have not the new phone. And they make you feel like you need to have the new phone. Obviously, money always has a lot to do with everything. I think that, look, it's worked out. Like you look at the culture in a way, it's like, man, this is great. I'm talking to you in some tiny little basement, in some home in the middle of nowhere. And you could hear my voice. So obviously all this stuff isn't completely bad, but it's stuff that we've gone so into the things and the stuff and the items. And this is why I quit my tech channels, because we became a materialist culture and I want to push against that, because after having kids, I realized that stuff doesn't matter. You could take everything I possibly have. So long as I have my family, I don't care. I will live in a van down by the river if that means I still have my family with me, because I promise you that's a better life than spending a bunch of time playing on your new gizmos and gadgets built by companies who are designing these things for you to stay on them as long as possible. Next, people they want stuff. They want new things. They want to be, a lot of stuff is status symbols. So you buy a really nice car and people look at you and go, man, that guy has a really nice car. Now they don't know you. They don't know the first thing about you, but you get that little hit of dopamine driving a car and having somebody look at it and going, wow, that's a really nice car. You get the hit of dopamine having the new phone, having the new laptop, having the new TV. You get that little hit of dopamine when people like see that you have nice stuff. Also, buying the stuff is those hits of, man, this feels really good. This feels really good. And eventually though, it's like you just have to keep doing more and more. When you are a kid, you are wowed by $20. And when you're an adult, you go, oh my gosh, that's like 2 meals at Chipotle. Like $20 is nothing. But when you're young, you $20 is $1 million. It might as well be $1 million because the things you want are so cheap and they're easy to get. It's like candy bars and they're just not that expensive. But then as you get older, you want to buy a house, you want to buy a car, you want to, I don't know, you want to go on vacation, you want to travel. All that stuff costs thousands and thousands of dollars, and that $20 no longer has the same value that it did when you were a kid. But a lot of that's just your perception, because you could change the way you view money. You could change the way you view things. If you stop viewing things as the highest thing that you're trying to achieve, then you can start to live and move past things, move past money. I talk about this a lot. The idea, in my opinion, is to be really good with money so that way you can move past it. And I think that my wife and I are on this great trajectory. We're doing really well. Our investment accounts, we invest all the time. Our house has gone up in money. And so we've done a lot of things really well. But it's finding that balance between like living for the moment and also like investing for the future. So I've never figured that out, basically. And finally, I think the last thing is that we as a culture have been absolutely bombarded by ads, which is a great segue to our sponsor. No, I'm just joking. But we are constantly bombarded by ads. Every single day you are seeing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of advertisements all the time on these devices that cost you $1,500, $1,200, $1,000. You buy this phone and they just pummel you with ads. That's every single business's business model, seemingly, is advertisements. That's it. Everybody is just selling ads now. And even like you'll see businesses that like T-Mobile will have ads for other companies on their website. It's the craziest thing. Everybody is selling an advertisement to something. That's like the business model right now. And I get it. I mean, I'm making money. I've made money off of advertisements. I've never taken a sponsor before in my entire life, but I do make money off of the ads that are run on potentially this channel, but the Scott Schroeder channel, and obviously my tech channel. And so you're always being sold on something, and you start to develop these relationships with these people that you listen to, that you watch all the time. You sort of start to trust them, and then they start to sell you this thing, and you go, well, man, geez, I mean, if they think I should buy this thing, and I really trust their opinion, I really trust what they say, then I should buy this thing. But they're just getting a paycheck, and maybe they do really like the product, but at the same time too, it's like, gosh, I mean, we are just pummeled every single second of every single day with advertisements all the time. That's our whole life. It's just, we wake up, we get advertised to for the next 16 hours, and we go to sleep, and we do the whole thing over again. So go outside and stop playing on your phone, because it's expensive, and I sound like such an old cranky man, but that's a great thing. It's because I'm a dad, I'm allowed to be an old cranky man. I'm entering my old cranky man era. All right, and the final episode, the final chapter today will be the tragedy of modern masculinity. And now this is a topic that I want to be very careful with, because I want to make sure that what I believe is getting brought across in the way that I want it to be brought across. So I think that I'm going to be reading from I have some notes written down, so I'm going to be reading from that a little bit. I think that there are several versions of masculinity that are fighting within the culture. There is the sort of Andrew Tate tough guy who I don't like. I mean, I don't like anything really that he stands for. And then there's the meeker type that views masculinity as toxic. And then there's the third kind that seeks to find masculinity in a family and in adventure and in love and in sacrifice. And that's the version of masculinity that I hopefully am trying to portray. I mean, this is called the Dear Young Men podcast, so I don't expect really any women to watch this at all, except for my wife, and she already knows what I think about all this stuff. So the third kind is the one that I am trying to portray in my life. I'm trying to be the third version of masculinity. The Andrew Tate kind, and why I don't like it, the first version. He's a pimp. I mean, that's how he's made a ton of money. He says he's worth like trillions of dollars. I don't think that that's true at all, but he's made a bunch of money off of the abuse of women. And I don't like that. Like, that's bad. I have 2 daughters, and I would rather be dead. Like, I would rather go to jail for a lifetime than have my kids have my kids be abused the way that he's abused women. Next, the tough guy is like this idea of men is this new modern idea of men is like he's in really good shape, he's strong, sometimes they're on steroids, they're like sort of a superhero type, and they sleep with a bunch of women, they have a lot of stuff, they're very materialistic, they live in a big mansion, they have fast cars, they have all this stuff, and stuff is cool, like I get it, like nice houses, fast cars, that's kind of cool, but that's not the ideal version of masculinity. That stuff, pretty soon that fast car will be slow. Pretty soon that big house will be small. All that stuff doesn't matter. Like, you're constantly going to be wanting more and more and more. I think that's more of a product of the culture. I think women can be the same way. Again, I'm not going to speak to women because I am not one. But the tough guy that sleeps with a bunch of women, that has a lot of fast cars and big houses, that ideal is not what I want men to reach for, because there's so much more to life than fast cars and sleeping with a bunch of women. That's a very sad way to live. Most men who live like that won't admit that they're sad. They would call me beta, whatever it may be. They call themselves alpha. But at the end of the day, it's a sad way to live, because you are living a materialist life, and a materialist life will never make you happy, because you can never own enough things. You can never sleep with enough women to actually find the true happiness and true love that you get from a wife and from having kids. Like, you won't. I've been single. I've been a materialist guy like that. And my life, looking back, my life was miserable back then. And you don't know it in the moment until it's like purgatory or even hell. I don't know how hell is going to be depicted I believe in heaven and hell. But I sort of have this idea that people in hell, they don't realize that they're in hell, and that's what puts them in hell. They think that their life is great, they have all this stuff, but they're constantly feeling bad about themselves. And that's kind of what I imagine hell is like. You don't know you're in hell, and that's what makes it hell. Next, I think the reason the Andrew Tate archetype has become so, I think there's a lot of reasons that people really gravitate towards him. And I think a big reason is that it's a slap in the face of the toxic masculinity type of person. I think that the toxic masculinity is more of a prevailing idea within more of the elite level establishment types, the news, the colleges, those types of people, that the toxic masculinity, that's their ideal. And to be honest, like, some of the stuff that they say might be right sometimes. Like, raping women is a bad thing. But the idea that masculinity itself, the idea of masculinity, that's toxic, that is exactly what people are pushing back with the strong man, with the Andrew Tate, with the guy who spits in the face of that, who's the exact opposite of that version of masculinity. And the reality is there's probably something like in the middle there. Like, that's really where we're trying to come, is like the toxic masculinity and the Andrew Tate masculinity. We're trying to find somewhere in the middle for them to meet. Maybe, and we could all be kumbaya and be happy. We can sing kumbaya and be happy. So I think that's why the Andrew Tate, the strongman archetype, has become so prevalent. And it's because it's a pushback and a spit in the face of the culture. And I think men specifically, I know I'm a guy, and I know that for me, it's like sometimes you just want to disagree for the sake of an argument. And I think that's a lot of what that is they want to just punch back because they just want to punch. They just want to hit something, and they feel like they can hit back against the culture in a way. They're not totally thinking it through. You don't normally think it through when you punch somebody. You're not thinking, man, should I do this? What are the ramifications of this? You just punch, and you don't think it through. And I think that the Andrew Tate masculinity version is not thinking it through. Next, I talked about, like, I don't think that this man knows what it's like to give everything to a family, to be your family's atlas. As a father, you are called to sacrifice constantly. You are called to make the most sacrifices. You are called to carry the weight and shoulder the burden for everything in your family. Obviously, your wife is there to support you and to help you and to wipe the sweat off your brow. But, like, she's not going to be able to shoulder the weight that a man should have to shoulder, because she's shouldering weight that a man can't shoulder. Like, my wife versus me consoling our kids, it's not even close. It's like it'll take me 4 times as long as it will take her, because she just has this tenderness and this loving and this kindness that I just can never do. But she can't make the hard decision because she just wants everybody to be happy all the time. So she'll just buy a nicer house, or she would just buy the nicer car, or she would, do the types of things that I'm saying, no, we can't do that. Like she doesn't want me to sacrifice as much as I do, but I know that I have to because I know that that's what's right. So the tough guy doesn't know that the love from a woman, in my opinion, is because they view women as objects. They view women as like they want to have as many notches in their belt as they possibly can. And that's a sad way to live because women are so much more, trust me, women are so much more than just like a notch on the bedpost. They are so much more than that. Trust me. And I think that at the end of the day, like I do kind of get the Andrew Tate version because like the way the culture has sort of pushed it's just so opposite of that. It's like the divorce courts are just very anti-man. Like it's just how it is. It's how it is. I mean, I'm going to sit here and say that I don't agree with it, but it's just the way that the cookie is crumbled, and that's life. And I think a lot of these guys are anti-marriage. They're anti everything that I'm sort of saying, but it's a risk to get married. And I think that it's a risk worth taking. And I would suggest anybody should get married. It will change your life in ways you could just never possibly imagine. Obviously, there's a huge risk. I mean, you're going to sacrifice. I sacrifice so much, and if my wife leaves me, I'll be heartbroken. Like I will have given everything for them. But it's like it's a risk, and you got to be a risk taker. Like that's life. You got to take the risk. That's what you just have to do. So I get it, but also at the same time too, it's like the risk, it's worth it. There is a risk though. It's not just, getting married, your life will be amazing for the rest of your life. People are dirty and rotten. We're all just a bunch of fallen people. But the upsides to a marriage are far greater than the downsides. And it's a risk worth taking, but it is a risk, and you have to understand that. Okay, so I'm not going to really talk about the toxic masculinity guy. I think that some of the points that they bring up, like I mentioned earlier, might potentially be valid. And I just like we don't need this to be a Scott Schroeder destroys woke TikTok feminist boyfriends. There's a million of those videos already. I'm not really interested in making that. I want to change people's hearts and minds through like more love instead of like just, I don't know, like making people feel bad. It's fine. Like there's a better way to do it. We don't have to just punch down, and that's fine. I disagree with that. I disagree with the way they view the world. I think that potentially, obviously, they might have some points, but I disagree with most of everything that they say. And finally, the final version of masculinity is, to me, it's the Jesus archetype. It's the type of man who will give everything for the people that he loves. Obviously, Jesus dies on the cross for everybody, for all sins, but men are called to emulate Jesus in a marriage. Like that's what they're called to do. They're called to emulate God, basically, to do their best. They never will. Trust me, I know I won't. But like that's what you're called to do. Is you're called to sacrifice. You're called to make the sacrifice play, basically. You're called to be put on the cross sometimes. And that's just what it comes down to be a man, in my opinion. So in our case, we are going to carry the weight of the family. I've talked about Atlas and how he carries the weight of the world. And I think that that's what we are called to do, to carry the weight of the world. I think a lot of the cultural masculinity is broken. It's why we have so many superhero films. It's like we just want to see a tough guy punch. We just want to see a big, like our version of masculinity now is either the toxic masculinity or the like Captain America masculinity, where he's a decent guy actually, but he like his superpower, like the reason we like him is because he can punch really hard. And that's it. Like that's why we like him, because he fights bad guys and he wears tights. And that's exactly the whole culture. Every movie is just superheroes. It's because we're just broken. We don't know how to portray men and women anymore in a way that shows off the best parts of each version. Like it's so silly because I feel like it's not that hard, but I think it's become so hard because we've completely just sacrificed everything for stuff and for a materialist worldview. Next, I think at the end of the day, you as a guy and me as a guy, we are called to love, not to bench press 500 pounds. And I think that it's important to be in good shape. I actually think that it's important to be in good shape. Just don't let it become vain and vanity. But at the end of the day, it's like you're called to love. You're called to sacrifice. And love and sacrifice are a lot different versions. Like love, sacrifice, take risks. I think that's what it is to be a man. And it's not to bench press 500 pounds. It's not to be on steroids. It's not to abuse women. It's not to have sex with every single woman you could possibly see. That's not what it's about. You're called to love. You're called to sacrifice. You're called to take risks. You're called to just do the things that will make your life better. That's what you're called to do. So that's my cringy masculinity conversation. I'm sure we'll go deeper into that at another date. It's not cringy. I think it's important. I just think that like people talking about masculinity is weird, and it's everybody just I think is wrong about it. Okay, all right. So we have a few sections on this show. The comment section is typically next, but we have no comments except for one from my friend Tom. You should check out his channel, Tom in the Sky. He commented that it was a good podcast. So thank you, Tom. You're the first commenter except for my wife, but my wife doesn't count because she knows she has to comment because I'm putting all this time into making these. And so she has to comment. She feels obligated to do it. So no comment section today, but we do have another section called Quote of the Day. And these are quotes that I really like, that I think have helped me and helped shape my life. I think that all these quotes are so awesome. I have a lot of quotes. I literally have an entire book that says Scott's favorite quotes because whenever I see one, I will cut it out or I'll write it down. This one is from Denzel Washington, the actor who's awesome, like one of my favorite actors, Denzel. He says, "The strongest, toughest men all have compassion. They're not heartless and cold. You have to be a man enough to have compassion, to care about people and about your children." And I think that to me sums up exactly everything we just talked about in the masculinity section. Just men, the toughest men, the strongest men, that not necessarily can lift a car, but they're the ones that have compassion, that have love, that are called to sacrifice, and they care about the people close to them. They protect the people close to them. And it's like my wife and I, the way we like sleep in our bed is I sleep next to the door because that's, in my opinion, that's just what a guy should do. It just makes her feel a little bit more comfortable. And while that's silly, it's like, that's just how it is. I turn off all the lights at night. I take the dogs out at night. Those types of things. You have to have compassion. You have to understand where your wife's coming from because sometimes she might seem crazy. She's a woman though, so she's kind of naturally crazy. I hope she can't hear me. And so at the end of the day, you're called to have compassion. You're called to love. You're called to care for people. And that's why I like this quote so much. Obviously, Denzel Washington is also awesome. So I think that's a big part of it, right? I mean, if Denzel Washington wasn't Denzel Washington, I probably wouldn't have used this quote. But since he's Denzel. So we're gonna read the quote. All right, and finally, the final section of the show: unsolicited advice. In the unsolicited advice section, I am allowed to tell you exactly what I think you should do. The rest of the show is kind of like that, but this part of the show is much more aggressive, and there's no filters. No, we pull the tops off. We pop the tops off. Pop the tarps off. Okay. Anyways, so my unsolicited advice today is to understand that compound interest is math's greatest principle, and there's so many ways this can go. So I want to talk about the 3 ways that I think this goes. And the first way is money. So I want to explain compound interest in terms of money first. Let's say you have $100 to invest into the stock market. And you invest $100 on day 1 of year 1. And over the course of the entire year, you make 10%, which means at the end of it, you have $110. And then year 2 starts. And instead of only starting with $100, you start with $110. So then you make the same 10% that you made in year 1. And that $110, instead of just becoming $120, it actually becomes $121 because you make the 10% off of the 10% that you made last year. So not only are you making $10 from the initial $100 investment, you make an additional $1 off of the $1.10 off of the initial investment. Obviously, this is small potatoes, but it can get really, 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 really super big, super duper quick. For example, if year 0, you invest $10,000 in the stock market, and every single year for 40 years, you make 10%, which is a lot, but the S&P since the 1930s has averaged 9.9%. You would have $198,374, which means that you made a net profit of $188,374. So you see how these numbers can get really big and really crazy really fast because you start to make money off of the money that you made. So you only invested $10,000, but you netted out almost $200,000 because the money that you made money. So at the end of it, let's say the last year you have $200,000, you make the 10% again, you make $20,000 that year, and you only started with $10,000 invested. So you see how these numbers can get so crazy? And this investing principle, the reason I start with money is because I think it's easiest to explain. That actually is how a lot of life works. That's how a lot of things work. So I've talked in the past about how I'm not as good at golf as I used to be, but I was really good at golf. And the way it works is you suck really, really, really bad at golf in the beginning. You're terrible, you whiff, you can't hit the ball. But over the course of time, you get 10% better every single year. It's slowly, instead of just improving 10%, then you improve the 10% plus the previous year's 10%. So now you technically improved 11%. And you start to stack that stuff on top of each other day in and day out. You come in day and day out. And every single year, every improvement you make, you're going to improve that much quicker every single time. And then you hit a point where it gets really, really hard to get good. And that's when you're really good. So that's how life works, is you have to put in the time now, and the payoff isn't until tomorrow. You sacrifice the $10,000 today, but you don't actually get the payout of the $200,000 for 40 years. So you have to be willing to think in decades and not days with every single thing in life. The investing principle of compounding interest is the single most important principle that you could possibly know ever. Like, that's just how life works. That's how every single thing in life works. If you put in the time now, the payoff might not come today, but you ride that momentum, you ride that streak of 10%, 10%, 10%, 10%, 10%, and you start to make big, huge, massive changes. And you'll look back over the course of 10 years and you go, I am so much better than the person I was back then. 10 years of 10% is technically 100%. But the way math works out is you will actually be 170% the person that you were if you just improve 10% every single year, which is just a little bit every single day when you start to break it down. 365 days in a year, 10%, you're talking about like 0.03% every single day, which is like a rounding error most times. So all you have to do is just learn to sacrifice, learn to be a little bit better, and learn that compounding interest is the absolute best principle that has ever existed in the history of the world. But it also can work in the opposite way. And that's the thing with compounding interest. It can be your friend, it can be your biggest friend, but it can also be your enemy. You start to make wrong choices here and there. Like, let's say you initially just start eating bad, and then you start to put on some weight, and then your wife doesn't find you quite as attractive anymore. And then you get frustrated that she doesn't find you attractive. So then, because you started eating bad and you started gaining weight, you see some other woman at the office who finds you attractive. So you start talking with her, you start flirting with her, and then you cheat on your wife with her. And so like it spirals. It spirals both ways. It's either great success and every single year you'll be making these bigger and bigger leaps and bounds, or the other way around where every decision can sort of lead to something else negative. Obviously, eating bad one time isn't going to change your life. My wife and I get ice cream all the time. We love ice cream, but it's the idea that you have to continue to make the right decision day in and day out. You make 9 out of 10 decisions right and you'll be fine, but it can work the other way where it spirals really quick. Compounding interest works in both ways. But what that means is that through all of it, the math is math. Numbers are numbers. That's the best thing about math. It's like they are truths and principles that cannot change. They won't be affected by who's ever president, who's ever, whatever job you have. Math is math. And that's the great thing, because no matter how many times you lose 10% or 20% or 50%, so long as you never let your progress hit zero, you never just become zero, because zero, in my opinion, would just mean you're dead. So as long as you're not dead and you still have a heartbeat, there's hope. Because even if you only, on the human point scale, if you're trying to get to 100 and you're at 0.000001, all it takes is just one day of moving it up to 0.00002, and then that's math. And then you start to improve the percentages. It could still work for you no matter how low you may be, but it's hard. Like, it's not always easy. It's not always easy to sacrifice. It's not always easy to do the right thing every day, day in and day out. I know that we're called to do that, but it's a lot harder than I'm saying, because I know that you're going to mess up. I know that I mess up all the time. You just have to try to day in, day out, just do a little bit better than you did yesterday. And if you did worse than you did yesterday, do better the next day. Just make sure you make it up somewhere, because math is math. And at the end of the day, the compounding interest will either save you or it'll kill you. So let's do the one where it makes your life better, because I tell you what, living a better life is better than not living a better life. Thank you guys for watching so much and listening. This has been Scott with the Dear Young Man podcast. The next episode will post next Wednesday at 8 a.m. and I will see you there. Bye.